Have you ever noticed how the loudest person in the room is rarely the most powerful? In a world that constantly urges us to broadcast our opinions, chase external validation, and fill every quiet moment with noise, true strength is often misunderstood. We've been taught that influence comes from volume, that respect is earned through visibility, and that silence is a sign of weakness. But what if everything we thought we knew about power was backwards? There's a profound presence that commands attention without demanding it, a quiet confidence that radiates more authority than any boast or proclamation ever could. This kind of power doesn't shout, it listens, it doesn't seek the spotlight, it becomes the calm within the storm, and this isn't some modern self-help idea. This wisdom has been waiting for us, perfected more than 2,000 years ago in the philosophy of Stoicism. The ancient Stoics understood something essential about human nature that many of us have forgotten. That real strength isn't about controlling others, but mastering yourself. In a time of chaos, uncertainty, and endless distraction, they cultivated a way of living grounded in clarity, purpose, and emotional resilience. They weren't passive or detached, they were disciplined, focused, and remarkably powerful in their ability to shape their inner world regardless of external circumstances. And at the heart of this philosophy were specific traits, ways of thinking, acting, and being that allowed them to move through life with a silence that spoke volumes and a power that required no explanation. In this video, we're going to explore 25 of these Stoic traits, qualities that, when practiced together, create an unshakable character and a presence that naturally commands respect. These aren't abstract ideas, they're practical, actionable principles used by emperors, thinkers, and leaders throughout history to navigate complexity with grace and authority. Whether you're looking to strengthen your mindset, improve your relationships, or simply carry yourself with more confidence and calm in a noisy world, these traits offer a timeless blueprint. So let's step away from the chatter and dive into the quiet power of Stoicism, a philosophy that teaches us how to speak less, listen more, and influence not through force but through unwavering character. The first and perhaps most fundamental trait in the Stoic arsenal is unwavering self-control. This isn't about suppressing emotions or living a life of cold, robotic denial. Instead, it's about cultivating a profound command over your impulses and your reactions. The Stoics called this prohersis our faculty of choice, our capacity to assent or withhold assent from any initial impression that pops into our mind. Think of it as the gap between a stimulus and your response. In that tiny, powerful space lies all our freedom and our power. The person who masters this space is the person who truly controls their destiny. This entire concept is built upon the cornerstone of Stoic philosophy, the dichotomy of control. The Stoics meticulously divided the world into two categories, things that are within our complete control and things that are not. What's up to us, our opinions, our judgments, our desires, our aversions, and our actions, essentially everything that is internal, the workings of our own mind. What is not up to us, our body, our possessions, our reputation, our job, and the past and the future, everything external. Most of our emotional turmoil, anxiety, and frustration stems from a simple error. We exhaust ourselves trying to control the uncontrollable while neglecting the domain we actually command. Imagine you're driving and someone cuts you off. The initial, raw impression is anger. That feeling is automatic. It's not within your control, but what happens next is everything. The undisciplined mind immediately assents to that impression. It latches onto the anger, fuels it with thoughts like, "How dare they, what a jerk," and then chooses a reaction, perhaps shouting, honking, or even aggressive driving. This person has handed their inner peace over to a stranger in another car. They are externally controlled. The Stoic, after feeling that same initial flash of anger, engages their self-control. They pause in that critical gap. They apply the dichotomy of control. I cannot control that driver's actions. That is external. But I have complete control over my judgment of this event and my chosen response. They might judge it not as a personal insult, but as a simple mistake, or perhaps a person having a genuinely bad day. Their chosen response becomes a calm adjustment to ensure safety, then a conscious release of the incident. Their power was never in changing the other driver, it was in governing their own inner world. This is how true power begins. You cannot hope to command respect in a boardroom, navigate a difficult conversation, or lead effectively if you are a slave to your own triggers. Mastering the internal is the non-negotiable prerequisite for influencing the external. It's the quiet power of choosing your battles, of not being easily offended, and of maintaining an unshakable equilibrium no matter the chaos swirling around you. This self-mastery makes you unpredictable in the best way. You cannot be manipulated by praise or criticism because your worth is determined internally, not externally. That is a power that truly commands silence. Building on that foundation of self-control, we arrive at the second trait, a profound and unshakable inner peace. The Stoics called this state ataraxia, a tranquility of mind that remains undisturbed by the chaos of external events. This isn't about feeling happy all the time or pretending that difficulties don't exist. It's about achieving a deep, steady calm that allows you to meet every circumstance, good or bad, with clarity and composure. This quiet confidence is perhaps the most noticeable form of silent power. It's a presence that doesn't need to announce itself because it radiates effortlessly. So how is this peace actually cultivated? It starts with a radical and deliberate acceptance of reality. The Stoic doesn't waste a single ounce of energy fighting against things that have already happened or are simply outside their jurisdiction. Imagine you've been working for weeks on a crucial project presentation, and an hour before the meeting, your computer crashes, corrupting the file. The initial panic is natural. But the person who lacks inner peace will spiral. They'll rage against the universe, blame the technology, and drown in a wave of anxiety and what-ifs. Their entire mental state is now held hostage by an event that is firmly in the past and utterly unchangeable. The Stoic, practicing acceptance, would take a very different path. After that initial jolt of alarm, they would quickly apply the dichotomy of control. The crash has happened. I cannot control that. It is now a fact of reality, like the weather. My power lies solely in my response to this fact. This acceptance isn't passive resignation. It's an active and strategic choice to stop fighting a battle that is already lost. With their mind calmed by this acceptance, they can now focus all their energy on what they can control. Perhaps they use a backup, quickly outline the key points from memory, or calmly inform the team and reschedule. Their power is in their adaptive, focused response, not in their emotional reaction to the obstacle. This practice creates a remarkable kind of strength. When you are no longer emotionally thrown off course by every setback or surprise, you become incredibly reliable and resilient. People begin to notice that you are the calm in the storm. In a crisis, everyone's eyes will turn to the person who is not panicking, the person whose mind is clear and whose hands are steady. This isn't a loud, demanding leadership. It's a quiet, magnetic authority that is earned through consistent composure. Your silence in the face of chaos speaks louder than any frantic order ever could. It tells everyone around you that the situation is manageable because you are managing yourself. This profound peace is the bedrock upon which true, commanding silence is built. This disciplined silence leads us directly to the third trait, one that might seem paradoxical in its power, the art of knowing when not to speak. In a world saturated with constant communication, where everyone feels pressured to have an immediate opinion and share every passing thought, the Stoic practice of measured speech stands out as a profound source of strength. The Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself in his private journal to avoid unnecessary talk. He wrote, Be silent for the most part, or if you speak, say only what is necessary and in a few words. This wasn't about being shy or antisocial. It was a strategic discipline. The Stoics believed that most speech is merely noise, idle chatter, complaints, gossip, or unsolicited opinions that drain our energy and create countless opportunities for error and regret. Think about the last time you felt compelled to fill an awkward silence in a conversation, or the time you jumped into a debate to score a point, only to realize you hadn't fully processed the other person's argument. We often speak to soothe our own anxiety, to project an image of intelligence, or to feel included. The Stoic, however, values the quality of words over the quantity. They understand that every word spoken is a piece of their energy and focus given away. By choosing silence, they conserve that energy for truly meaningful contributions. This creates a powerful presence. When a person who is typically quiet finally chooses to speak, the entire room leans in to listen. Their words carry weight precisely because they are not diluted by constant chatter. There is also an immense strategic advantage in being the quiet observer. In any negotiation, meeting, or conflict, the person who speaks least often holds the most power. They are free to listen, to absorb information, to read the room, and to understand the motivations and weaknesses of others. While everyone else is busy formulating their next rebuttal or trying to be heard, the Stoic is gathering intelligence. This allows them to craft a response that is not reactive but calculated and impactful. Their eventual contribution, when it comes, is often the one that cuts to the heart of the matter precisely because it was born from observation, not from a need to perform. This practice extends far beyond formal settings. Consider the temptation to vent your frustrations or to gossip about a colleague. The undisciplined mind sees this as a harmless release. The Stoic sees it as a triple loss. You waste energy on something outside your control. You potentially damage another's reputation and your own in the process, and you train your mind to focus on the negative. Choosing silence in these moments is an act of self-respect and power. It's a declaration that your inner peace is not for sale at the price of petty conversation. This disciplined restraint builds a reputation for integrity and trustworthiness. People learn that you are not a source of drama or loose talk, and they will confide in you because they know your silence is dependable. In this way, the silent Stoic doesn't just avoid error. They actively build a foundation of respect that speaks louder than any words ever could. This strength of silence, born from choosing our words with care, is what allows us to build the fourth essential trait, profound emotional resilience. Where the previous traits focused on managing our reactions and our speech, this one delves deeper into managing the very source of those reactions, our emotional landscape. The Stoic goal was never to become emotionless robots, a common misconception. Instead, they sought to achieve apatheia, a state free from unhealthy, destructive passions that cloud judgment and derail us from living virtuously. This is the practice of not being ruled by your emotions while still fully acknowledging them. It's the difference between feeling anger and being angry, between feeling fear and being fearful. This emotional toughness creates a quiet confidence that is unshakable because it isn't dependent on everything going right. So how do we build this resilience? The Stoics developed several powerful mental techniques. One of the most famous is premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils or negative visualization. This isn't about pessimistic worrying, it's a proactive exercise in emotional vaccination. You deliberately and rationally visualize potential challenges or losses you might face. Imagine for a moment seriously contemplating the possibility of losing your job. Don't just fear it, walk through it in your mind. What would you do first? Who would you call? How would you adjust your lifestyle? By mentally rehearsing adversity, you accomplish two crucial things. First, you reduce the shock and emotional sting if it actually happens. The event moves from being a terrifying, unknown monster to a familiar scenario you've already navigated in your mind. Second, and perhaps more importantly, you develop a deep gratitude for what you have right now. By consciously imagining life without your job, you suddenly appreciate having it in a way you probably didn't 5 minutes ago. This practice builds resilience by making you less afraid of the future and more anchored in the present. Another cornerstone technique is cognitive distancing, the ability to separate yourself from your initial, raw impressions. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus advised his students to say to every distressing impression, "You are just an impression and not at all the thing you profess to be." This is the mental equivalent of seeing a scary shadow on the wall and then turning on the light to see it's just a coat on a chair. When you feel a surge of anxiety before a big presentation, the undisciplined mind says, "I am anxious." This is terrible. You have fused with the emotion. It becomes your entire identity in that moment. The resilient Stoic mind, practicing cognitive distancing, says, "I am experiencing a sensation of anxiety. This is a feeling that has visited me and it will also pass." You are the observer of the weather in your mind, not the weather itself. This tiny shift in perspective is incredibly liberating. It creates a buffer between the stimulus and your response, giving you the power to choose how you will relate to that emotion rather than being consumed by it. This emotional resilience translates directly into a commanding, silent presence. Think of two leaders facing a corporate crisis. One is visibly panicked, their voice trembling, their decisions reactive and fueled by fear. The other is calm, their demeanor steady. They feel the same urgency, the same pressure, but their training in resilience allows them to process those feelings without being hijacked by them. Their silence isn't empty, it's full of gathered strength and processing power. People are instinctively drawn to this stability. It signals competence and control in the most authentic way possible, not through loud boasts, but through a quiet, unwavering steadiness that says, "I can handle this." That is a power that doesn't need to announce itself. It is felt in the stillness, in the measured response, in the ability to hold space for difficulty without crumbling. This resilience is the armor that protects your inner peace, allowing your silent confidence to remain intact no matter what the world throws your way. This uncomplaining endurance is the fifth pillar of Stoic strength, a virtue that transforms the very nature of hardship. The Stoics didn't believe in simply suffering through difficulty, they believed in using it. They saw every challenge, every inconvenience, and every pain as raw material for building a stronger character. To complain is to reject this material, to declare it worthless and unfair. But to endure without complaint is to accept the raw material and begin the work of sculpting it into something of value. This silent bearing of weight demonstrates an immense inner fortitude that speaks more eloquently than any boast ever could. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who spent most of his reign on the harsh frontiers of the Roman Empire, battling invaders and managing crises, constantly practiced this. In his private meditations, he didn't vent his frustrations, he reinforced his resolve. He wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." This is the core of the Stoic view. The complaining mind sees a hardship as a bucket of water meant to douse its flames. The Stoic mind sees that same hardship as fuel. A cold, wet log doesn't extinguish a strong fire. It eventually catches and makes the fire burn even hotter. Marcus reminded himself that his power lay not in having an easy life, but in using a hard one well. His silent endurance on those military campaigns wasn't a sign of passive suffering. It was an active, powerful choice to lead by example, to show his soldiers that the difficulty was not an enemy to bemoan but a terrain to be crossed. Epictetus, who was born a slave and endured a life of brutal physical hardship, took this concept even further. He taught that it is not events that disturb us but our judgments about them. He famously said, "He who sings a song of complaint bears a double burden." Think about the profound truth in that. The first burden is the actual event itself, the pain, the loss, the inconvenience. The second, far heavier burden is the complaining narrative we build around it. We layer onto the original problem the energy spent on vocalizing our anger, the mental rehearsal of our grievance, and the emotional toll of seeing ourselves as victims. This second burden is entirely self-inflicted. The person who endures silently carries only the first weight. They feel the pain, they acknowledge the difficulty, but they refuse to amplify it with their own words and thoughts. This conservation of energy is a massive strategic advantage. While others are exhausted by their own complaints, the Stoic has energy left to actually solve the problem or simply outlast it. This practice builds a reputation of incredible reliability and grit. In your own life, consider the people you truly respect. Is it the person who loudly announces every minor inconvenience they face, or the person who quietly deals with significant challenges without making a spectacle of their struggle? The silent endurer commands a deep, unspoken respect because their actions prove their character. They are the colleague who meets an impossible deadline without whining, the parent who handles a family crisis with steady hands, the friend who supports you through your hard times without needing to list all of their own. Their power comes from this proven capacity to handle reality. They don't need to tell you they're strong. Their lack of complaint demonstrates it incontestably. This trait is the practical application of all that came before. It is self-control applied to pain, inner peace maintained during storms, and measured speech exercised under pressure. It is the ultimate proof that your philosophy is not just something you talk about, but something you live. This ability to not complain is founded on something even more fundamental, a clear and unbiased view of reality itself. This brings us to the sixth Stoic trait, the master skill that underpins all the others: objective judgment. The Stoics believe that we don't react to events, we react to our judgments about those events. It's not the rainy day that ruins your picnic that frustrates you. It's your judgment that a rainy day shouldn't have happened, that it's unfair and has ruined your plans. Objective judgment is the disciplined practice of stripping away these layers of emotional interpretation to see the event for what it truly is, nothing more and nothing less. It is the difference between seeing a problem and seeing a catastrophe, between a setback and a personal failure. This clarity is the ultimate source of powerful, rational decision-making. Marcus Aurelius offered himself constant reminders of this practice. He would write notes to himself saying things like, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." Now, this sounds pessimistic, but it's actually a profound exercise in objectivity. He isn't cursing humanity. He is stating a simple, factual possibility. By preparing his judgment in advance, he removes the emotional sting of surprise and indignation. When he then encounters a dishonest person, his objective judgment is already primed. There is a person acting dishonestly. This is within the realm of what happens in the world. He doesn't layer on the judgment. This is a terrible personal insult to me, or the world is an awful place because this exists. He simply sees the thing for what it is and chooses his virtuous response accordingly. His power lies in that unclouded perception. This practice is like being a scientist of your own life. A scientist observes data without immediately labeling it good or bad. A virus isn't evil, it simply is. The scientist's job is to understand its properties and determine a response. Similarly, the Stoic trains themselves to observe the events of their life with that same detached curiosity. You receive criticism from your boss. The initial raw data is, "My boss said X about my performance." The undisciplined mind immediately adds a judgment. "He hates me. I'm going to be fired. This is a disaster." The objective mind, however, pauses. It examines the data. "He said X. Is it true? Is it partially true? What can I learn from this data point? What is within my control to do about it? By separating the factual event from the emotional narrative, you regain all your power. You are no longer a victim of the event. You are an analyst assessing information. This clarity is what allows for truly powerful and decisive action. Imagine two investors looking at the same crashing stock market. One sees only the emotional narrative of loss and panic, leading to frantic, fear-based selling. The other, practicing objective judgment, sees the crash as a simple market correction, a volatile but natural event. This clear sight allows them to ask rational questions. Which fundamentally strong assets are now undervalued? What is my long-term strategy? Their subsequent actions are not reactions but calculated responses. This is the power of objective judgment. It doesn't make you cold or unfeeling, it makes you effective. It ensures that your energy is directed toward solutions rather than being drained by drama. In your daily life, this might look at a traffic jam not as a personal affront designed to ruin your day, but as a simple convergence of cars, a neutral event to which you can respond by listening to an audiobook or planning your day. This shift in perception is subtle, but its cumulative effect is a life of immense quiet power, where you are the calm, clear-eyed master of your judgments and therefore of your world. This practice of voluntary discomfort, often called the hard way, is the seventh Stoic trait and a direct training ground for the resilience we've been discussing. It's the deliberate and periodic choice to say no to comfort, convenience, and ease, not as a form of self-punishment, but as a form of strength training for the soul. The Stoics believed that by willingly embracing small, manageable hardships, we inoculate ourselves against the paralyzing shock of unexpected misfortune. We build a kind of psychological callus that allows us to handle life's inevitable difficulties with far greater grace and far less fear. A person who is accustomed to some discomfort cannot be easily manipulated or destabilized by it. The ancient Stoics were masters of this. Seneca, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, would regularly practice poverty. He would set aside a few days each month to wear his simplest clothes, eat only the most basic bread, and sleep on a hard floor. He wasn't pretending to be poor, he was reminding himself that he could endure poverty. He was proving to himself that his happiness and his worth were not dependent on his luxurious villa or his fine foods. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?' This exercise shatters the illusion that comfort is a necessity. It reveals that we are far more adaptable and far tougher than we give ourselves credit for. By voluntarily stepping into discomfort, we expand our comfort zone enormously." This practice is incredibly practical and accessible to anyone. It doesn't require moving into a shack in the woods. It's about choosing the harder option in small, everyday moments. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Take a cold shower for the final 30 seconds of your morning routine. Walk somewhere instead of driving. Skip a meal intentionally and feel the sensation of hunger, knowing you are in complete control. Turn off the entertainment and sit in silence for 15 minutes. Each of these tiny acts is a vote for your own self-mastery. They are rehearsals for adversity. When you consciously choose a minor hardship, you are telling your subconscious mind, "I am the type of person who can handle difficulty. I am not fragile." This builds a deep, unshakable confidence that is completely internal. The power this creates is immense and deeply silent. A person who has practiced voluntary discomfort is not thrown off course when the air conditioning breaks on a hot day, when a flight is delayed, or when they have to work through lunch. They have a reservoir of resilience to draw from. More importantly, they become incredibly difficult to manipulate. Advertisers can't sell them a product by preying on their fear of social discomfort. Critics can't wound them with petty insults because their self-worth isn't tied to constant praise. They appreciate the good times with a profound intensity because they know these things are gifts, not entitlements. Their gratitude is active, not passive. This creates a person who is genuinely free, not because they have everything they want, but because they want less and are prepared for anything. Their quiet power comes from the proven knowledge that they can thrive with less, making them independent of fortune's whims. This profound resilience, built through enduring hardship and seeing the world with clear eyes, requires a specific kind of focus to be fully realized. It demands that we anchor ourselves not in the regrets of yesterday or the anxieties of tomorrow, but squarely in the reality of right now. This brings us to the 8th Stoic trait, a practice that transforms mere existence into a powerful, grounded presence, mindful presence. The Stoics called this the practice of living in the present moment, and they saw it as the only place where life actually happens and where our power truly resides. A mind that is scattered across time is a weak mind, easily distracted and manipulated. But a mind that is fully concentrated on the present task at hand is a formidable instrument of clarity and action. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this in his meditations. He wrote, "Give yourself a gift the present moment." He wasn't talking about a frivolous purchase. He was pointing to the most valuable resource we have, one we consistently squander. We sacrifice this moment to worry about a future we cannot control or to relive a past we cannot change. The Stoic asks a simple, piercing question. What real power do you have in any moment other than this one? You cannot act in the future. You cannot change the past. Your entire capacity to think, to choose, and to act is confined to the ever-unfolding present. Therefore, to neglect it is to neglect your only point of contact with reality and your only source of agency. A person who is fully present is not easily startled or thrown off balance because their entire cognitive and emotional resources are dedicated to navigating what is actually happening, not what might happen. This practice creates a presence that is both calm and intensely powerful. Think about the most respected person you've ever interacted with, a great teacher, a mentor, a leader. What was one of their most noticeable qualities? Chances are when they spoke with you, you felt like you were the only person in the room. They weren't glancing at their phone, their eyes weren't darting around looking for someone more important, and their mind wasn't clearly elsewhere. They were right there with you, listening completely. That level of attention is incredibly rare, and as a result, it is incredibly impactful. It commands respect not through authority or title, but through the simple, profound act of giving someone your full focus. This is mindful presence in action. It signals that you value the current interaction above the noise of everything else, and in doing so, you value the person you are with. The power of this extends far beyond social grace. Consider a critical situation, like a surgeon performing a complex operation or a pilot navigating turbulent weather. Their survival and the survival of others depend entirely on their ability to be completely and utterly present. There is no room for daydreaming about dinner or worrying about an argument they had that morning. Their entire being must be channeled into the sensory input and necessary actions of the now. The Stoic applies this same surgical focus to the operation of daily life. When you are working, just work. When you are eating, just eat. When you are listening, just listen. This isn't about productivity, it's about power. By funneling all your energy into the present moment, you perform every task with greater skill, you absorb information more completely, and you make decisions with significantly clearer judgment. Your work becomes sharper, your relationships become deeper, and your inner world becomes quieter because you are no longer pulled in a dozen different directions by mental time travel. Cultivating this trait is a daily discipline. It starts with catching your mind when it wanders and gently guiding it back to the sensations of the current moment, the feeling of your feet on the floor, the sound of the keyboard clicks, the specific task in front of you. It's about repeatedly choosing to engage with reality as it is, not as you fear or hope it might be. the reward for this practice is a kind of unshakable groundedness. People will feel this in your demeanor. You will carry yourself with a quiet assurance because you are not mentally off somewhere else, defending against phantom problems. You are right here, capable and ready to meet whatever this moment holds. This is a silent power that needs no fanfare. It is communicated through your calm eyes, your attentive posture, and your purposeful action. It is the power of being fully in the room and in your life. Now we arrive at a trait that beautifully synthesizes many of the principles we've discussed so far, creating a uniquely compelling presence, humble confidence. At first glance, humility and confidence might seem like opposites. Our culture often mistakes confidence for arrogance, a loud, chest-thumping assertion of one's own importance. And it frequently misinterprets humility as a form of weakness or self-deprecation. The Stoics, however, saw these two qualities not as opposing forces, but as the essential, complementary pillars of a truly powerful character. This is the quiet understanding that you are part of something much larger than yourself, coupled with an unshakable trust in your capacity to navigate your role within it. It's confidence in your principles and your ability to act with virtue, paired with humility about your place in the grand scheme of the universe. This balanced mindset is rooted in the Stoic concept of the cosmic perspective. Marcus Aurelius spent countless hours reflecting on the vastness of the universe, the endless expanse of time, and the countless individuals who had come before him. He wasn't doing this to feel small and insignificant. He was doing it to achieve a proper sense of scale. He wrote, "Think of the universal substance, of which you have a very small portion, and of universal time, of which a short and indivisible interval has been assigned to you, and of that which is fixed by destiny, and how small a part of it you are." This reflection is the ultimate source of humility. It reminds you that you are one person among billions on a small planet in an unimaginably vast cosmos. Your knowledge is incomplete, your time is limited, and your personal dramas are a tiny blip in the grand narrative of history. This realization is incredibly freeing. It dissolves the ego's desperate need to be the most important, the most right, or the most recognized. But this cosmic humility does not lead to passivity. Instead, it gives birth to a purer, more resilient form of confidence. When your sense of self-worth is no longer tied to being better than others or knowing everything, you are liberated to act with courage based solely on your character. Your confidence shifts from "I am the best" to "I am capable of doing my best with what I have, right here, right now." This is confidence in your proherses, your faculty of choice. You become confident not that you will always succeed, but that you will always choose to act with integrity, courage, and justice to the best of your ability, regardless of the outcome. This confidence is internal and therefore unshakable by external failure or criticism. You can be wrong about a fact and still be confident in your character because you are willing to learn and correct course. This is how humble confidence creates a silent authority. The person who possesses it doesn't need to announce their qualifications or win every argument. They listen more than they speak because their goal is understanding, not conquest. They can admit fault easily because their ego isn't tied to being infallible. They give credit to others freely because they don't need the spotlight to validate their own contributions. Consider the difference between two leaders. One constantly name drops, reminds everyone of their accomplishments, and dominates conversations to prove their intelligence. Their authority is loud, brittle, and requires constant maintenance. The other leader is quiet, asks insightful questions, and readily says, "That's a good point, I hadn't considered that," or "You know more about this than I do, what do you think?" Their authority is quiet, solid, and magnetic. People trust them because their lack of pretense signals authenticity and security. Their confidence is proven by their comfort with not knowing everything. This is the power of humble confidence. It disarms potential adversaries, invites collaboration, and commands respect through a combination of strength and grace. It is the mark of a person who is so secure in their own character that they have nothing to prove to anyone else, making their presence both powerful and profoundly inviting. This foundation of humble confidence provides the perfect grounding for our next trait, which is about how that inner state expresses itself in the world: purposeful action. For the Stoic, action was never meant to be frantic, reactive, or scattered. Every deed, no matter how small, was to be infused with clear intention and aligned with their core values. They called this acting with proherses, a will that is choice-worthy, ensuring that their movements in the world were not random impulses but deliberate expressions of their character. This is the difference between being a leaf blown by the wind and being the sailor who trims the sails to navigate that same wind with skill and direction. One is controlled by external forces, the other uses them to move purposefully toward a chosen destination. This practice begins long before any action is taken, in the quiet space of reflection. A Stoic doesn't just leap into a task or blurt out a response. They pause to connect the potential action to their overarching purpose. They might ask themselves a version of the question Epictetus posed to his students: what is the goal of this action? Is it aligned with my nature as a rational, social being? Does it contribute to the common good? This moment of intentional pause is what separates purposeful action from mere reaction. Imagine you receive a sharply worded email from a colleague. The reactive path is to immediately fire back an even sharper reply, fueled by indignation. The action is swift, but it is an unconscious reaction to an external stimulus. The purposeful path is to feel that initial flush of anger, acknowledge it, and then choose not to be ruled by it. You close the email, you take a walk. You ask yourself, what is my goal here? Is it to win a petty argument and soothe my wounded pride? Or is it to maintain a productive working relationship and resolve a genuine issue? Once your intention is clarified to resolve, not to retaliate, your subsequent action, whether it's a carefully worded reply or a request for a calm conversation, becomes a powerful, chosen response. This alignment between action and values is what makes movement appear so competent and powerful. We've all encountered people who seem to operate this way. They are not the busiest people in the room, rushing from one fire to the next. They are often the calmest. They move with a sense of deliberateness that commands attention. When they speak, their words seem to carry weight because it's evident they've been considered. When they undertake a project, they see it through with a steady focus that is immune to the distractions and dramas that derail others. Their power comes from this evident clarity. They are not swayed by every new opinion or drawn into every trivial debate because their internal compass, their set of values, provides a constant bearing. This allows them to say no with conviction to opportunities that don't align, preserving their energy for the yes that truly matters. This creates a profound and silent authority. A leader who acts purposefully doesn't need to give motivational speeches about hustle culture or busyness. Their focused action itself is the motivation. The team sees that the leader's attention is not fragmented. It is fully dedicated to the most important task at hand, and this inspires them to bring the same level of focus to their own work. Purposeful action is also incredibly efficient. While the reactive person expends energy on a dozen different distractions, the Stoic channels all their effort into a single, meaningful thrust. This is how they accomplish more by seemingly doing less. Their actions are cumulative and directed, not cancelled out by working at cross purposes with themselves. In the end, this trait transforms your life from a series of random events into a coherent narrative, a story you are authoring with every intentional choice, a story of moving not quickly but surely toward a life of virtue and impact. This profound sense of purpose allows us to shift our focus from what we lack to the abundance we already possess, which brings us to the 11th Stoic trait, a mindset that fundamentally redefines the relationship between wanting and having, contentment with less. In a culture that equates success with accumulation and happiness with the next purchase, the Stoic practice of voluntary simplicity is nothing short of revolutionary. It is the deliberate cultivation of satisfaction with what you have, not as a form of resignation, but as the ultimate declaration of independence. This isn't about owning nothing. It's about not being owned by your possessions, your status, or your desires. The power that comes from this contentment is a quiet, unassailable force because it stems from a source that no one can take away, your own judgment. The Stoics called this practice autarkeia, or self-sufficiency. It's the realization that your well-being and your worth are internal jobs, not external acquisitions. Seneca drove this point home when he wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." This reframes the entire concept of wealth. A person with millions in the bank who is constantly anxious about making more or losing what they have is truly impoverished. Meanwhile, a person with modest means who has trained their mind to find deep satisfaction in their life, their relationships, and their work is genuinely rich. Their wealth is immune to market crashes, theft, or bad luck. This internal wealth is what creates a peaceful and powerful presence. When you are not desperate for the next thing, the next promotion, the bigger house, the newer car, you stop emitting waves of neediness and ambition that people can sense. Instead, you radiate a calm assurance. You are not trying to impress anyone because you are already impressed with the character you are building and the life you are living according to your values. This practice is actively built through a twofold mental exercise. The first is the negative visualization we discussed earlier, periodically imagining the loss of what you have. This isn't morbid, it's a tool for awakening a fierce gratitude for your present reality. By mentally walking through life without your health, your family, or your home, you return to the present moment with a renewed and vibrant appreciation for them. The second exercise is consciously limiting your desires. This is the practice of enough. It's looking at your perfectly functional car and consciously deciding, this is enough. I do not need a new one to be happy. It's enjoying a simple, home-cooked meal and declaring it sufficient, rather than scrolling through food delivery apps dreaming of something more exotic. Each time you do this, you strengthen your mental muscle of contentment. You prove to yourself that your happiness is not contingent on external upgrades. The freedom this creates is extraordinary. A person content with less cannot be easily manipulated by advertisers who sell products by inventing insecurities. They are not thrown into a crisis of identity if their social media post doesn't get enough likes because their validation is generated internally. In a negotiation or a competitive environment, this contentment is a huge strategic advantage. The person who is desperate for the deal, who needs it to feel successful, is in a weak position. They will make concessions, lower their standards, and compromise their values out of that need. The person who is content, who would be perfectly fine walking away, holds all the power. They can stick to their principles and demand fair value because their sense of self isn't on the line. This quiet independence is incredibly compelling. It signals to others that you are not a person of cheap wants but of deep value. Your presence isn't shouting about what you lack, it's quietly demonstrating the abundance you've already found within. This unwavering composure during life's inevitable storms is what the Stoics called grace under pressure, and it remains one of the most visibly powerful traits a person can cultivate. It's the ability to keep your head when everyone else is losing theirs, not because you don't feel the fear or recognize the danger, but because you have trained your mind to prioritize effective response over emotional reaction. This isn't an innate gift reserved for a special few. It is a skill built through deliberate practice and a specific way of interpreting the world. When crisis hits, this calm demeanor becomes a beacon, guiding others and signaling a depth of character that commands immediate and profound respect. We see this Stoic grace illustrated perfectly in the historical example of Julius Caesar's famous incident aboard a small boat in the Adriatic Sea. Amid a violent storm, as the sailors panicked, fearing for their lives, Caesar remained utterly calm. He did not scream or pray to the gods for salvation. Instead, he simply turned to the terrified captain and said, gently but firmly, "What do you fear? You carry Caesar." Now, on the surface, this sounds like incredible arrogance, but viewed through a Stoic lens, it reveals something far more profound. Caesar wasn't claiming divine protection. He was embodying a core Stoic principle. He was reminding himself and the captain that the storm was an external event, a fantasiae or impression, and therefore not within his control. His terror would not calm the waves. His panic would not help the crew. The only thing within his control was his own character and his response. By choosing calmness, he wasn't denying the reality of the danger. He was choosing the most useful and virtuous state of mind to meet that danger. His presence, his character, was the only cargo that mattered in that moment, and he refused to let it be shipwrecked by the storm. This same principle is available to anyone, not just Roman emperors. The practical technique for achieving this begins long before any crisis emerges. It's built on the daily practice of the dichotomy of control, constantly reinforcing the mental muscle that distinguishes between what is and is not yours to command. Then, in the moment of pressure, you engage in a simple but powerful three-step process. First, you consciously pause and take a deep breath. This physiologically interrupts the fight or flight response and creates that critical gap between the event and your reaction. Second, you silently label the event for what it is using objective judgment. Instead of thinking, "This is a disaster," you state the facts. The client is threatening to leave. This is a problem that requires a solution. This immediately de-escalates the emotional charge and frames the situation as a puzzle to be solved rather than a threat to your identity. Third, you rapidly apply the dichotomy of control, asking, "What parts of this situation are within my influence right now?" Your racing heart not in your control. The client's emotional state only influenceable, not controllable. Your own breath, your next words, your next action entirely within your control. By funneling your entire focus onto that slim list of controllables, you bypass the paralyzing anxiety of the uncontrollables and mobilize into purposeful, effective action. The impact of this grace is unmistakable and its power is magnetic. In any high-pressure environment, a hospital emergency room, a corporate meltdown, a family crisis, the person who remains calm immediately becomes the de facto leader, regardless of their official title. Their quiet stability is like a rock in a raging river. Others instinctively gravitate toward them, drawing strength from their composure. This respect isn't demanded, it is effortlessly earned. This person is not ignoring the gravity of the situation. Their calmness proves they understand it perfectly and are choosing the most effective way to navigate it. They demonstrate that true strength isn't about the absence of fear, but the mastery of it, transforming panic into focus and chaos into clarity. Their silence in the storm is not passive, it is the most active and powerful response of all. This unwavering integrity in how we present ourselves to the world is the bedrock of a 13th Stoic trait, one that cuts through the noise of modern communication with remarkable clarity, truthful communication. In an age of exaggeration, spin, and carefully curated personas, the Stoic commitment to simple, unvarnished honesty is a superpower. It isn't about brutal frankness or offering unsolicited opinions under the guise of just being honest. Instead, it is a disciplined practice of aligning your words with reality, speaking with a clarity that builds unshakable credibility and a trust that no amount of charismatic performance can ever hope to match. The Stoics understood that lies, even small ones, create a fracture in the soul. Every time you exaggerate your accomplishments to impress someone, downplay a mistake to avoid blame, or tell a white lie for convenience, you are not just deceiving another person, you are first and foremost deceiving yourself. You are reinforcing a version of reality that does not exist, and in doing so, you weaken your own grip on what is true. Epictetus was brutally direct on this point. He taught that the first and most important aspect of your character is to never say aloud anything that you do not believe to be true in your own mind. This is the foundation. He saw the tongue as something that must be rigorously disciplined, just like any other impulse, because careless words have the power to create immense chaos both internally and externally. A person whose word is their bond carries a profound sense of self-respect. They know they can trust themselves, which is the origin of all external trust. This practice of truthfulness extends far beyond simply not lying. It encompasses a commitment to avoiding gossip, hyperbole, and dramatic storytelling that distorts events for effect. Consider the common tendency to embellish a story to make it funnier or to make oneself look a little better in a retelling. The Stoic asks, what is the cost of this small exaggeration? You trade a moment of social validation for a tiny crack in your integrity. You also create a subtle anxiety. You must now remember the fabricated details to maintain consistency. Now imagine a person who is known for never doing this. When they tell a story, people listen intently because they know every word is reliable. When they give a compliment, it carries immense weight because everyone knows it is genuine, not merely flattery. This reputation for truthfulness is built one honest sentence at a time, and it becomes a form of silent currency more valuable than any boast. The power of this trait is most evident in difficult situations. Delivering hard truth, whether it's critical feedback to an employee, an uncomfortable diagnosis to a patient, or admitting a serious error to a client, is where Stoic honesty truly shines. The undisciplined communicator either avoids the truth entirely, causing greater long-term harm, or delivers it with such unnecessary harshness that the message is lost in the emotional reaction it provokes. The Stoic, however, practices what we might call compassionate objectivity. They first ensure their own motives are pure. Is this truth being shared for the other person's benefit or to make myself feel superior? Then they strip the message of all judgmental language and stick to the bare, objective facts. Instead of saying, "You were irresponsible and your work on this project was lazy," which attacks the person's character, the Stoic would say, "This report was submitted 2 days past the deadline, and it contains 3 factual errors on page 2 which change the conclusion." The first statement invites defensiveness and shame. The second, delivered calmly, simply presents a problem to be solved together. This method builds incredible trust, even in the midst of failure, because it demonstrates that your commitment to truth is not a weapon but a tool for improvement. Your silence, your pause to choose the right words, speaks of your care and your respect for the other person, making the difficult truth something they can actually hear and act upon. In a world full of noise and manipulation, becoming a person of quiet, consistent honesty is one of the most powerful and commanding choices you can make. This profound understanding that our power lies in the quality, not just the quantity, of our actions leads us directly to a trait that masters the dimension in which all action takes place, time itself. The 14th Stoic trait is patient timing, a sophisticated grasp of what the Greeks called kairos, the opportune or right moment. This is not passive waiting or simple patience. It is the active, discerning skill of knowing precisely when to act and when to hold back, understanding that force applied at the wrong time is merely wasted energy, while a small, well-timed action can move mountains. Rushed action is often just poorly disguised anxiety, a need to feel productive rather than to be effective. But the Stoic, governed by reason rather than impulse, understands that timing is everything. The ancient Stoics made a crucial distinction between 2 concepts of time, chronos and kairos. Chronos is quantitative, sequential time, the ticking of the clock. the pages of the calendar turning. This is time as a measurable resource. Kairos, however, is qualitative time. It's the fleeting, perfect moment for action, the critical juncture where conditions align to make an action most potent and likely to succeed. It's the difference between throwing a punch at random and waiting for your opponent to be off balance before you strike. One requires brute force, the other requires wisdom, perception, and impeccable timing. The Stoic seeks to master Kairos, to develop a sense for the rhythm of events and to move in harmony with it rather than fighting against it. This skill is developed through intense observation and the disciplined restraint of our most basic urge, the urge to act immediately. Imagine a seasoned gardener. They cannot command a seed to sprout faster by digging it up every day to check on it. They understand the necessity of the unseen work happening beneath the soil. Their job is to provide the right conditions: water, sunlight, good soil, and then to wait, trusting the process. The Stoic approaches their goals with the same mindset. They prepare diligently, they set the conditions for success, and then they possess the wisdom to not force the outcome before it's time. This is the opposite of laziness. It is strategic patience. It is the power to watch a situation unfold, to allow other people to reveal their intentions, and to let the initial wave of emotion in a conflict subside before stepping in with a clear and rational solution. We see this principle applied with masterful effect in the stories of great Stoic leaders. The Roman general Fabius Maximus, whom later historians believed was influenced by Stoic ideas, was facing the devastating Carthaginian general Hannibal. Every previous Roman commander had charged headlong into battle against Hannibal and had been annihilated. Fabius adopted a completely different strategy, later called the Fabian strategy. He refused to engage Hannibal in a direct, pitched battle. Instead, he shadowed the Carthaginian army, harassing their supply lines, cutting off their reinforcements, and engaging only in small, opportunistic skirmishes that bled his enemy slowly. His own troops and senators in Rome called him a coward for his delay and his avoidance of a glorious fight. But Fabius understood Kairos. He knew the opportune moment to destroy Hannibal's army had not yet arrived, and that acting out of a desire for glory or to silence critics would lead to certain defeat. His patient timing, his willingness to endure criticism and wait for the right moment, ultimately saved Rome and wore down one of history's greatest military threats. You can apply this same principle to your own life with powerful results. Consider a difficult conversation you need to have with your partner or a colleague. The reactive approach is to initiate it the moment the anger flares, often leading to a heated argument where nothing is resolved. The Stoic approach, understanding Kairos, is to feel the emotion but not be ruled by it. You might say, "This is an important topic and I want to give it the attention it deserves. Can we talk about it after we've both had some time to think, maybe this evening?" This simple act of delaying the conversation is not avoidance. It is a strategic choice to create the right conditions, a calmer emotional state, a time without distractions, where a real resolution is possible. You are choosing the right moment for the action to have its maximum positive effect. In business, this might look like holding off on launching a new product until market research is complete, even when there is pressure to be first. In personal growth, it means understanding that you cannot force a new habit to stick overnight. You must practice it consistently and patiently, trusting that the compound effect of small, daily actions will eventually yield transformative results. Patient timing is the quiet confidence that you will know when to move because you are paying attention to the world, not just to your own impatient desires. It is the power of the archer who does not release the arrow simply because the bow is drawn, but who waits for the wind to still and the target to come into perfect alignment. This trait completes the picture of Stoic action. It is not just what you do and why you do it, but when you do it that transforms mere activity into truly powerful, world-changing effectiveness. This profound understanding of timing brings us to a critical shift in focus. from the external results we hope to achieve to the internal effort we can actually control. The 15th Stoic trait is a liberating practice that dissolves a massive source of human anxiety, detachment from outcomes. This is perhaps one of the most misunderstood of all Stoic principles. It does not mean not caring about results or becoming apathetic. Instead, it is the sophisticated art of investing your entire being in your actions while simultaneously releasing your tight-fisted grip on the outcome of those actions. The Stoics called this the archer's philosophy. A skilled archer can do everything within their power. They can choose the best arrow, practice for thousands of hours, steady their breath, draw the bow with perfect form, and release at the ideal moment. But once the arrow leaves the bow, it is subject to 1,000 factors beyond their control: a sudden gust of wind, a moving target, a stray leaf. The Stoic archer's goal is not to hit the target. That is the preferred outcome, but it is not entirely up to them. Their true goal is to shoot well, to execute every action within their control to the best of their ability. This shift in focus from the target to the technique is the source of immense freedom and quiet power. The entire practice is built upon the foundation of the dichotomy of control, applied here with surgical precision. Your effort, your intention, your preparation, your ethics, your focus, these are your domain. The final result, the opinion of others, the market conditions, the judge's score, the other person's reaction, these are external. When you tether your sense of worth, your happiness, and your self-esteem to the external outcome, you hand over the keys to your inner peace to a world that is chaotic, unpredictable, and utterly indifferent to your desires. This is why people experience such crushing performance anxiety before a big presentation or a first date. They have already leaped ahead in their mind to the outcome. Will they get the funding? Will they be liked? And because that outcome is uncertain and uncontrollable, they are paralyzed by fear. The Stoic approach is to ruthlessly bring your focus back to the process. Your job is not to win the contract. Your job is to deliver a clear, honest, and thoroughly researched presentation. Your job is not to make them like you. Your job is to be authentically yourself, to be a good listener, and to be kind. By fulfilling your role with excellence, you have already succeeded, regardless of the external result. This is not a consolation prize, it is the entire game. This mindset cultivates a remarkable calm assurance that is both noticeable and magnetic. Think of two surgeons preparing for a complex operation. One is intensely focused on their reputation, thinking, "I must succeed, everyone is watching, my career depends on this." Their anxiety is palpable, their hands might even shake. The other surgeon, practicing Stoic detachment, thinks, "I have studied the procedure, I have a skilled team. My responsibility is to be well-rested, focused, and to execute each step to the absolute best of my ability. The patient's physiology and ultimate recovery are factors I will respond to, but they are not mine to command." This second surgeon enters the operating room with a calm, focused presence that inspires confidence in everyone around them. Their power comes from their total immersion in the process, not from a desperate need for a specific result. They are free to perform at their peak because they are not mentally burdened by the weight of an uncertain future. The practical application of this is a daily mental exercise. Before any significant undertaking, clearly define for yourself the two categories. Write down what is within your control: my preparation, my honesty, my effort, my attitude. Then write down what is not: the final decision, other people's choices, luck, timing. Pour every ounce of your energy into the first list and consciously release the second list to the universe. After the event, measure your success not by the outcome, but by how well you adhered to your own standards of effort and virtue. Did you do your best? Did you act with integrity? If the answer is yes, then you won, even if you lost the deal or the race. This practice builds an incredibly resilient and authentic form of self-confidence. Your sense of worth becomes internal and therefore unshakable. You can fail a dozen times without being a failure because your identity is not tied to the result but to the quality of your character and your effort. This allows you to take bigger risks, to be more creative, and to engage with the world with a lightheartedness that is impossible for the person who is desperate to win. Your calm assurance tells the world that you are not playing for approval. You are playing for the integrity of the game itself, and that is a power that commands deep and silent respect. This rock-solid alignment between our internal world and our external actions forms the very heart of the 16th Stoic trait, a quality that silently broadcasts our trustworthiness to everyone we meet: consistent character. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, meaning living as a rational and social being whose private thoughts and public actions are in complete harmony. It's the radical idea that who you are when absolutely no one is watching should be exactly the same person who shows up in the boardroom, at a family gathering, or in any public forum. This isn't about wearing a mask of virtue. It's about having your virtue so deeply ingrained that there is no mask to remove. The power generated by this consistency is immense because it creates a reputation of unwavering reliability, a promise that you are who you say you are, which is the foundation of all meaningful trust. Epictetus, who lived this principle despite his life of hardship, framed it with beautiful simplicity. He said, "If you wish to be a good person, convince yourself that you are a bad one." At first, this sounds counterintuitive, but his meaning is profound. He is advising constant, ruthless self-examination. The person who believes they are already good stops working on themselves. They become blind to their own inconsistencies and hypocrisies. But the person who humbly suspects they might still have flaws is perpetually vigilant. They are always checking their motivations, ensuring that their private judgments align with their public statements, and that their actions serve their principles, not just their pleasure or reputation. This internal audit is what forges a truly consistent character. It's the work of ensuring there is no backstage version of you that contradicts the performance you put on for the world. The practical power of this is most evident in the trust it builds. Think about the people in your life you truly rely on. They aren't necessarily the most charismatic or entertaining. They are the ones whose behavior is predictable because it is principled. You know how they will react under pressure. You know they will keep a secret. You know their word is a binding contract. This reliability is a form of silent capital that accumulates over a lifetime of small, consistent choices. It's the colleague who speaks with the same respect about an absent coworker as they do to their face. It's the leader who makes the same difficult ethical decision when it will cost them personally as they would when it's easy and public. This consistency tells everyone around you that you are not governed by the opinions of others or the allure of short-term gain, but by a core set of values that you will not compromise. In a world of shifting alliances and situational ethics, such a person becomes a human anchor. This commitment inevitably leads to a form of power that is both quiet and undeniable. A person with consistent character cannot be easily manipulated or cornered. You cannot pressure them into a shady deal by appealing to their greed because their principle of honesty is stronger. You cannot turn them against a friend with gossip because their loyalty is not for sale. Their values act as an internal constitution, a set of pre-established laws that govern their behavior in every situation. This makes them incredibly straightforward to deal with, but also immovable on matters of principle. Their no is a real no, and their yes is a genuine commitment. There is no second guessing their intentions or wondering if there is a hidden agenda. This clarity and predictability free up immense mental and emotional energy for everyone in their orbit. People don't have to waste effort deciphering their motives or building contingencies for their potential betrayal. This allows for deeper collaboration, more honest communication, and relationships built on a foundation of stone, not sand. The silent message of a consistent character is this: You can trust me because I trust myself to live by my own code, and that is the most commanding form of power there is. This practice of detached focus on our own actions naturally sharpens our most underrated tool for understanding the world around us, bringing us to the 17th trait, observational wisdom. If patient timing is about knowing when to act and purposeful action is about what to do, then observational wisdom is about the crucial groundwork that informs both. It is the disciplined practice of withholding judgment and suspending the urge to immediately react, choosing instead to become a student of the situation. The Stoic understands that the world is complex and that our first impressions are often misleading, colored by our biases, fears, and desires. True power, therefore, comes not from being the first to speak or the quickest to decide, but from being the one who sees the situation with the greatest clarity. This quiet observation is a form of active intelligence, a strategic gathering of information that prevents wasted effort on misguided actions. Marcus Aurelius, in the chaos of leading an empire, constantly reminded himself of this need for careful perception. He wrote, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." This simple statement is a powerful instruction manual for navigating life. It tells us to stop at the initial impression. When you receive a piece of gossip about a colleague, the undisciplined mind accepts it as fact and may even act upon it, potentially damaging a relationship based on a skewed perspective. The mind trained in observational wisdom, however, receives that same information and immediately applies a filter. It says, "This is one person's opinion of an event. I have not witnessed this myself. There may be other contexts or motivations I am unaware of." This pause creates a buffer, a space where you can choose to seek more information or simply file the claim away as an unverified data point rather than a call to action. This habit prevents countless errors and preserves social harmony. The power gained from this approach is both tactical and profound. In any conflict or negotiation, the most powerful person in the room is often the one who says the least at the beginning. While others are busy stating their positions, arguing their points, and revealing their strategies, the observant Stoic is listening, watching, and mapping the terrain. They are noting not just what is being said, but how it is said, the body language, the unspoken tensions, and the underlying interests behind the stated demands. This allows them to understand the true dynamics at play, not just the surface-level argument. When they finally do choose to speak, their contribution is not a reactive opinion but a synthesized solution that addresses the core issues everyone else was too busy talking to notice. Their words carry immense weight because they are born from deep understanding, not from a need to be heard. This practice extends far beyond formal settings into the very fabric of daily life. Consider the simple act of walking into a crowded room. Most people are preoccupied with how they are being perceived, a self-focused anxiety. The person practicing observational wisdom shifts their focus outward. They become an anthropologist of the moment, noticing the groupings of people, the flow of conversation, the individual who seems withdrawn on the periphery. This outward focus does two things. It diminishes their own self-consciousness, and it provides them with valuable social intelligence. They might notice the quiet person who has been trying to contribute and gently bring them into the conversation, an act of kindness that also reveals them to be a perceptive leader. They avoid the social misstep of telling a boisterous joke to a group that is clearly discussing something serious. This ability to read a room is a form of wisdom that makes one's actions more effective and one's presence more welcome. Cultivating this trait is a matter of training yourself to embrace the pause. It is the conscious decision, when faced with any new information or potential conflict, to not have an immediate opinion. It is the courage to say, "I don't know yet, I need to understand more." This requires humility and the suppression of the ego's desire to have all the answers instantly. The reward, however, is a dramatic increase in the effectiveness of your actions. you will find that you intervene less but your interventions matter more. You will speak less but your words carry greater impact. You will avoid the exhausting futility of trying to solve a problem you didn't fully understand, instead applying your energy with the precision of a surgeon rather than the brute force of a sledgehammer. Observational wisdom is the quiet engine of efficient power, ensuring that your actions, when you finally take them, are informed, deliberate, and far more likely to succeed. This profound sense of observation naturally deepens into a richer appreciation for the very things we so carefully notice, which brings us to the 18th Stoic trait, a daily ritual that transforms perception into power, the disciplined practice of gratitude. In a philosophy often associated with enduring hardship, this focus on appreciation might seem surprising, but the Stoics understood it as a fundamental weapon against dissatisfaction and a primary source of inner strength. This isn't the fleeting feeling of thankfulness we experience when something good happens. It is a proactive, often challenging, mental exercise of regularly confronting the possibility of loss to awaken a fierce and present joy for what we already possess. This cultivated contentment does not radiate a sense of complacency, but rather a quiet confidence that comes from knowing your happiness is built on a foundation that cannot be easily taken away. The Stoic practice of gratitude is deeply intertwined with the technique of negative visualization we discussed earlier, but it takes it one step further into a daily discipline. It's the conscious habit of not just imagining the loss of your possessions, your health, or your loved ones, but of then turning that sobering thought into a vibrant appreciation for their current presence in your life. Seneca advised that we should remember that even the things we take for granted are on loan from fortune, and we should love them as things that are not ours to keep. This shift in perspective is revolutionary. It transforms your morning coffee from a mundane routine into a small pleasure to be savored. It makes the familiar sight of your partner or your child feel like a daily miracle rather than a given. This practice is the antidote to hedonic adaptation, that human tendency to quickly return to a baseline level of happiness after acquiring something new. The Stoic doesn't fight this tendency. They hack it by mentally giving things away to get them back anew each day. The power this generates is a form of deep-seated independence. A person who actively practices gratitude is not easily manipulated by the culture of endless wanting. Advertisements that try to sell you happiness by making you feel inadequate lose their potency when you are already deeply satisfied with what you have. This doesn't mean you stop striving for improvement. It means your striving comes from a place of purpose and curiosity, not from a void of neediness. Your motivation is, I want to see what I can build and contribute, not, I need this new thing to finally be happy. This internal abundance is palpable. It radiates as a calm, grounded presence that is neither desperate for validation nor jealous of others' success. You can genuinely celebrate a friend's good fortune because your own sense of well-being is not threatened by it. Implementing this is a matter of creating a simple, daily ritual. It could be a few moments in the morning before you even get out of bed, mentally listing 3 things you are grateful for, not just the big things like health or family, but the small, tactile details, the warmth of the blankets, the sound of rain against the window, the aroma of brewing coffee. It could be a practice during a daily walk, consciously appreciating your body's ability to move, the beauty of the trees, the freedom of your schedule. The key is to move beyond the abstract noun and connect with the specific sensory experience. Don't just be grateful for your home. Be grateful for the particular way the afternoon light falls across your favorite chair in that home. This specificity makes the gratitude practice vivid and real, jolting you out of autopilot and into the rich reality of the present moment. This consistent practice builds a reservoir of resilience that is a quiet superpower. On a difficult day when things are going wrong, you have trained your mind to instinctively seek out and latch onto the points of light that remain. The project at work might be failing, but you can still find a moment of gratitude for the colleague who offered a kind word or the warm meal you had for lunch. This is not naive optimism, it is strategic fortification. It is the mental equivalent of a ship having multiple watertight compartments. Even if one section is flooding, the entire vessel doesn't sink. Your baseline contentment might be shaken, but it is not shattered because it was built on 1,000 small appreciations, not one large, fragile possession. This ability to find footing even in a storm is a form of strength that others will instinctively lean on, making your grateful silence a source of stability and calm for everyone around you. This profound sense of internal abundance born from gratitude gives you the clarity and strength to define what you will and will not allow into your life, which brings us to the 19th Stoic trait, the non-negotiable practice of boundary setting. In a philosophy dedicated to distinguishing between what is and is not within our control, this is the ultimate practical application for managing our social world. It is the art of knowing what to accept and what to reject, not with aggression or resentment, but with a calm, firm clarity that communicates self-respect and commands the respect of others. The Stoic understands that without clear boundaries, you are a public thoroughfare. Anyone and everyone can trample through your time, your energy, and your peace of mind. Setting limits is not a rejection of others. It is an affirmation of your own values and your limited resources, making it one of the most powerful and silent declarations of self-mastery. The entire concept is built upon the bedrock of the dichotomy of control applied to human interaction. You cannot control another person's requests, demands, or behavior. That is external, but you have absolute control over your response, your assent, or your refusal. A boundary is simply the line where your responsibility ends and someone else's begins. It is the conscious decision to stop taking ownership of other people's problems, emotions, and emergencies that are not yours to solve. The person who lacks boundaries often feels overwhelmed and resentful because they have implicitly agreed to be responsible for things that are outside their jurisdiction. The Stoic, however, conserves their energy for their own domain, their own duties, their own growth, their own peace. They understand that saying no to a non-essential request is saying yes to their priorities, their rest, and their integrity. Communicating these boundaries is where Stoic calmness becomes a superpower. The undisciplined approach is either aggressive, "you can't talk to me that way," or passive-aggressive, leading to simmering resentment. The Stoic method is assertive, which is calm, clear, and devoid of emotional charge. It involves stating a fact and a consequence without apology or excessive justification. Imagine a colleague repeatedly tries to dump their unfinished work on your desk at the end of the day. The reactive response might be to complain to others or to finally explode in frustration. The Stoic response would be to wait for a calm moment and state clearly and simply, "I cannot take on any extra tasks after 4 p.m. because that time is reserved for my own project work." If you have a concern about your workload, let's discuss how you can readjust your priorities with our manager tomorrow. This statement does not attack the colleague's character. It simply outlines a personal limit and offers a rational, alternative path forward. The power is in the calm delivery and the unshakable assumption that your boundary is reasonable and needs no defense. This practice commands respect because it signals that you value your own time and mission. People are surprisingly adept at sensing who they can take advantage of and who they cannot. The person who is always available, always saying yes, and always sacrificing their own needs is often the first to be exploited, and paradoxically, the last to be respected. Their constant availability devalues their contribution. Conversely, the person with clear boundaries communicates that their focus is valuable and their time is precious. Their yes becomes meaningful because everyone knows their no is a real possibility. This doesn't make you unhelpful, it makes you strategic in your help. You become the person who can be relied upon to do what you promise, precisely because you only promise what you can truly deliver without compromising your well-being or your other commitments. Your calm, firm no protects your ability to deliver a stellar, focused yes on the things that truly matter, building a reputation for incredible reliability and unflappable self-possession. This deep-rooted resilience and gratitude empower a form of strength that is fluid and dynamic rather than rigid and brittle, leading us to the 20th Stoic trait, adaptive flexibility. This is the profound understanding that true power lies not in resisting the flow of events with brute force, but in skillfully adapting to them, using their very energy to propel you forward. The Stoics encapsulated this idea in the powerful phrase amor fati, a love of fate, and the principle that the obstacle itself becomes the way. This isn't about passive acceptance of difficulty. It's about an active, creative engagement with reality, where every setback, every change of plans, and every unexpected challenge is seen not as a barrier to your path but as the raw material for building a new and often better one. The core of this philosophy is the rejection of a fixed and fragile attachment to a single, predetermined outcome. The person who has meticulously planned their future and rigidly expects reality to conform to their blueprint is setting themselves up for constant frustration and disappointment. Their strength is the strength of a tall, rigid oak tree in a hurricane. It may stand firm for a while, but eventually it will snap. The Stoic, practicing adaptive flexibility, cultivates the strength of a willow tree. Its branches are flexible, they bend and sway with the storm's force, allowing the wind to pass through them rather than meeting it with uncompromising resistance. When the storm is over, the willow is still standing, still rooted, and still whole. This flexibility is not weakness. It is a sophisticated and durable form of strength that understands the nature of the world is change. We find the ultimate expression of this in the Stoic exercise of turning obstacles upside down. Marcus Aurelius advised, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. This is a deliberate mental reframe that transforms problems into opportunities. Imagine a sculptor who discovers a large, unexpected flaw in the marble block they are working on. The rigid artist might see this as a disaster, a ruinous imperfection that destroys their original vision. They might abandon the work in frustration, seeing only the death of their plan. The flexible artist, the Stoic artist, sees the flaw not as an ending but as a new beginning. They pause, study the stone's new character, and allow the flaw to guide their chisel in a different direction. The final sculpture, though different from the initial design, might be far more interesting and powerful because it incorporated the obstacle into its very essence. The obstacle didn't block the way, it became the way. This principle is incredibly practical in daily life. Consider a project manager whose key team member suddenly resigns days before a major deadline. The rigid response is panic, blame, and a desperate attempt to somehow force the original plan to work with a glaring hole in it. The adaptively flexible response, however, starts with amor fati. This has happened. This is now part of our reality. How do we love this fate? How does this become the way? This shift in perspective unlocks creativity. Perhaps this forces the team to streamline the project, cutting out nice-to-have features and focusing on the essential core, resulting in a more elegant final product. Perhaps it allows a junior team member to step up and demonstrate unexpected skills, strengthening the team's long-term capacity. The obstacle of losing a key person becomes the way to a more resilient and efficient workflow. The flexibility was in the plan, not in the standards. The goal of excellence remained fixed, but the path to get there was adapted to the new terrain. This trait commands a unique form of silent power because it demonstrates a profound mastery over circumstances. The person who adapts seamlessly to changing conditions exudes a sense of unflappable competence. They are never truly off balance because they are not relying on the world to remain static for their plan to work. Their confidence comes from their proven ability to handle the unexpected, to pivot, and to find advantage in disadvantage. In a leadership role, this flexibility is magnetic. It assures everyone that no matter what happens, the leader will not be paralyzed. They will assess, adapt, and find a path forward. This isn't the loud power of someone who always gets their way. It is the quiet, deeper power of someone who always finds a way, no matter what the world throws at them. It is the power of water which wears away the hardest rock not through force, but through persistent, adaptable flow. This ability to adapt and flow with circumstances requires a mind that is not fractured by competing demands, which brings us to the 21st trait, a practice that harnesses the full force of your cognitive resources, focused attention. In an age of endless notifications, multitasking, and digital distraction, the Stoic commitment to single tasking is a radical act of reclaiming your mind and your power. This isn't just a productivity hack, it is a profound discipline of directing your entire conscious awareness onto the task immediately at hand, whatever it may be. The Stoics called this bringing your whole mind to the matter in front of you, and they saw it as the only way to perform any action with true excellence and virtue. A scattered mind is a weak mind, easily manipulated and perpetually anxious. A focused mind, however, is a laser beam of clarity and competence, capable of cutting through complexity with astonishing efficiency. Marcus Aurelius offered himself a simple yet powerful reminder of this practice. He wrote, "Give yourself a gift, the present moment." He wasn't speaking of a material present, but of the invaluable resource of your own undivided attention. He continued, "Now, if you bring your mind to bear on what is before you, and attend to it with diligence, simplicity, and seriousness, caring nothing for the spectacle others provide or what they might say about you, you will live a happy and prosperous life." This instruction is a masterclass in focused attention. He outlines the entire process. First, you identify the immediate task, then you bring your whole mind to it. You apply diligence, meaning consistent effort. You apply simplicity, meaning you strip away the complicated narratives and just do the thing. And you apply seriousness, meaning you treat the task with the respect it deserves, whether it's drafting an empire-wide decree or washing a dish. Most importantly, you shut out the internal and external noise, the worry about how you look to others, the mental replay of yesterday's argument, the anxiety about tomorrow's meeting. Your world for those moments contracts to the size of the single thing you are doing. The power generated by this practice is both internal and external. Internally, focused attention is a sanctuary from anxiety. Psychological research now confirms what the Stoics knew intuitively. A mind focused on a present, manageable task cannot simultaneously be consumed by worry. Anxiety thrives in the gap between the past and the future. It withers under the laser light of present moment focus. When you are completely absorbed in writing a report, solving an engineering problem, or even just chopping vegetables for dinner, there is no mental space for the chaotic noise of unresolved thoughts. This creates a profound and quiet inner peace. Externally, the impact is just as significant. The person who works with deep focus accomplishes tasks with a higher degree of skill, fewer errors, and in less time than the chronic multitasker. But beyond mere efficiency, they develop a presence that is unmistakably powerful. When you are in a conversation with someone who is giving you their full, undivided attention, no phone glances, no distracted nods, no mental preparation of their next point, you feel it viscerally. That level of attention is so rare that it feels like a gift. It communicates respect, value, and a deep sense of calm competence. People will describe this person as really having it together or being so present without always knowing why. The reason is their trained capacity for focused attention. Cultivating this trait is a daily battle against the pull of distraction, and it begins with recognizing multitasking for the myth that it is. The human brain is not designed to perform multiple cognitively demanding tasks simultaneously. It is designed to switch between them rapidly, and each switch comes with a cognitive cost known as a switch tasking penalty. You lose time, you increase errors, and you drain your mental energy. The Stoic antidote is to consciously designate blocks of time for singular pursuits. This could mean turning off all notifications and dedicating 25 minutes solely to writing a proposal. It could mean, when talking with your child, physically putting down your device and making eye contact, ensuring your entire being is communicating that they are the sole focus. It is the practice of when you read, just read. When you walk, just walk and observe your surroundings. Each of these acts is a repetition that strengthens your mental muscle of concentration. This disciplined focus completes the picture of Stoic action. It is the final ingredient that takes purposeful action and patient timing and infuses them with the raw power of your entire cognitive capacity. It ensures that your energy is not dissipated across a dozen half-finished tasks, but is channeled into a single, potent stream. The result is a person who moves through the world not with frantic busyness, but with a calm, deliberate, and incredibly effective presence. Their work is of higher quality, their relationships are deeper, and their inner world is quieter and more resilient. In a distracted world, the ability to focus completely is not just a skill. It is a formidable and silent form of power that announces, without a word being spoken, that here is a person who truly masters their own mind. And this mastery of our own focus leads us directly to the very engine of all Stoic power, personal accountability. This is the crucial habit of taking sole ownership of your judgments, your reactions, and your actions, while simultaneously releasing your grip on everything that is not yours to control. It is the radical and empowering decision to stop pointing fingers at external circumstances and to instead look inward as the sole source of your authority and your peace. The Stoic understands that the moment you blame another person, a bad economy, rotten luck, or your difficult childhood for your current state, you have instantly handed over all your power to that external force. You have made yourself a passive victim of events, but the moment you say, "This is my response, this is my interpretation, this is my doing," you reclaim your agency and become the active author of your life story. This practice is the ultimate expression of the dichotomy of control applied to the narrative we tell ourselves. Epictetus, who had every reason to blame the world for his station, he was born a slave and physically crippled, was perhaps its greatest champion. He famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This isn't a trite cliché, it's a declaration of independence. He taught that while we may not control the initial event, we are 100% responsible for the judgment we form about it and the subsequent action we take. Imagine two employees who both get laid off in a corporate downsizing. The first one spends months blaming the incompetent management, the heartless corporation, and the unfair economy. They see themselves as a wronged victim, and this mindset paralyzes them. Their energy is consumed by resentment, and their job search is half-hearted because they feel the world owes them something. The second employee, practicing Stoic accountability, allows themselves to feel the initial shock and disappointment. Then they turn their focus inward. They ask, "Okay, this has happened. What is within my control now? My effort in updating my resume, my network of contacts, my willingness to learn new skills, my attitude during interviews." They take full ownership of their response. They don't waste a second on blame. The first person gives away their power, the second person exercises it, and their outcomes will be dramatically different as a result. This mindset creates an authority that is both quiet and undeniable. A leader who practices personal accountability is a gravitational force. When a project fails, they don't look for a subordinate to scapegoat. They stand up and say, "The buck stops with me. I take responsibility for this outcome." This does not make them look weak, it makes them appear incredibly strong and trustworthy. Their team sees that this leader is secure enough to own their mistakes and will therefore also own the solutions. This builds immense loyalty and respect. Conversely, a leader who blames their team for failures but takes credit for successes quickly erodes trust and creates a culture of fear and finger-pointing. Their authority is brittle and requires constant external validation. The accountable leader's authority is internal and therefore unshakable. This extends to the most personal aspects of our lives as well. Consider a strained relationship. It is easy and tempting to catalogue all the ways the other person has failed or hurt you. The path of blame is a well-worn one. The path of accountability, however, is more challenging and infinitely more powerful. It involves turning the spotlight on yourself and asking, what is my part in this dynamic? How have my reactions escalated the conflict? What unmet expectation of mine is causing this resentment? What is a more virtuous response available to me, regardless of what they do? This doesn't mean accepting abuse or becoming a doormat. It means taking ownership of your half of the street. You cannot control the other person's behavior, but you are 100% responsible for your boundaries, your communication, and whether you choose to engage in a cycle of retaliation. This shift from blame to self-ownership is the first and most critical step toward any genuine resolution, or, if necessary, a healthy separation. Your power lies not in changing them, but in mastering your own role in the interaction. This profound form of self-command, where you alone are the curator of your responses, is the deepest and most silent source of power there is. This brings us to a powerful and often counterintuitive trait that synthesizes courage with supreme discipline, courageous restraint. We often picture bravery as a bold charge into action, a loud declaration, or a forceful stand. But the Stoics recognized a far more sophisticated form of valor: the courage to hold back, to stay your hand, and to choose strategic silence over a reckless outburst. This is not inaction born from fear or apathy. It is a conscious, difficult, and potent choice to withhold your power to make it ultimately more effective. It is the strength to absorb a blow without retaliating, to hear an insult without correcting it, and to see a provocation without taking the bait. This disciplined pause is where true power is consolidated and perfected. The Stoic concept of courage, or Andrea, was never just about physical bravery. It was a cardinal virtue encompassing the moral courage to do what is right, even when it is difficult or frightening. And sometimes the most morally courageous act is to not react at all. Seneca explored this deeply, advising that the greatest remedy for anger is delay. He understood that the initial, raw impulse to strike back, whether with words or deeds, is almost always a slave's response, a reflexive jerk of the puppet strings by external events. The truly courageous person, the free person, interrupts this circuit. They impose a delay between the provocation and their response, and in that sacred space, they exercise their freedom to choose a different, more virtuous path. This act of restraint is a victory over the easier, more primitive part of ourselves that seeks immediate gratification through reaction. Consider a historical example that embodies this principle. During the tumultuous years of the American Civil Rights Movement, leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and the activists who trained in nonviolent resistance were modern Stoics in their practice of courageous restraint. They were subjected to unimaginable hatred, violence, and verbal abuse. The reflexive, natural response to being spat upon or screamed at is to fight back, to meet force with force. That would have been the easier path in many ways, a release of the building pressure, but they consciously and courageously chose restraint. They trained themselves to not retaliate, to not even meet hatred with hatred. This restraint was not weakness, it was their most powerful weapon. By absorbing the violence without returning it, they exposed the brutal nature of the oppression for the entire world to see. Their quiet dignity in the face of chaos became a mirror that reflected the ugliness of their aggressors, ultimately galvanizing public opinion and bending the moral arc of the universe toward justice. Their power was in their proven ability to endure without breaking their own principles. In our own daily lives, this trait manifests in moments both large and small. It is the manager who has the courage to not immediately interject their own idea in a meeting, creating space for quieter, more junior team members to contribute and flourish. It is the parent who feels the surge of anger at a defiant child and chooses to take a deep breath and walk away for 5 minutes instead of escalating the confrontation with a harsh punishment spoken in rage. It is you resisting the overwhelming urge to send that searing text message in the heat of an argument, knowing that words released cannot be taken back and that a conversation held in person after tempers have cooled will be infinitely more productive. In each case, the courageous act was to do nothing in that immediate moment. The discipline of restraint protected relationships preserved dignity and ensured that any subsequent action would be thoughtful, purposeful, and far more effective than any knee-jerk reaction could ever be. This practice requires an immense amount of inner strength because it goes against our deepest instincts. It feels like we are losing when we don't fight back immediately. But the Stoic understands that by refusing to play the game on your opponent's terms, you seize control of the entire board. Your restraint demonstrates that you cannot be easily triggered or manipulated. It shows that your sense of worth and your peace of mind are so solidly internal that no external insult or provocation can force you to compromise your character. This makes you unpredictable in the most strategic sense and incredibly difficult to defeat. An adversary simply doesn't know how to engage you because you won't engage in the ways they expect. Your power, therefore, is not in the force of your attack, but in the unassailable strength of your poise. Your silent restraint speaks louder than any shouted argument, communicating a depth of self-mastery that commands a profound and lasting respect. This quiet, daily dedication to refining our character leads us directly to the 24th Stoic trait, a practice that transforms self-mastery from a destination into a lifelong journey, the commitment to continuous improvement. The Stoics called this prokopton the pursuit of daily progress in virtue. This isn't about grand, sweeping declarations of change or dramatic overhauls that are announced to the world. It is the humble, relentless, and deeply personal work of becoming slightly better today than you were yesterday, and better tomorrow than you are today. This silent, compounding growth builds a strength of character that is not performative but foundational, radiating a power that is felt rather than heard. The entire philosophy is built on the understanding that excellence is not a single act but a habit. As Aristotle, a profound influence on the Stoics, famously said, "We are what we repeatedly do." The Stoics took this further, applying it specifically to moral and mental excellence. Their goal was not to achieve a state of perfect virtue and then simply rest there, a goal they saw as impossible for any human. Instead, their focus was on the direction of travel, on the momentum of their progress. They measured their days not by external achievements or acquisitions, but by an internal scorecard. Did I act with more courage today? Did I exercise more self-control? Was my judgment a little more objective? Did I meet that difficulty with more grace? This daily audit ensures that your energy is consistently invested in the only project that truly matters and is entirely within your control, the refinement of your own character. We see this practice lived out in the most intimate way through the private journal of Marcus Aurelius. His work, Meditations, was never intended for publication. It was his personal workbook, his training ground. In its pages, we don't find a perfect emperor boasting of his triumphs. We find a man engaged in a daily, often difficult dialogue with himself. He writes reminders, coaches himself through weaknesses, reinforces his principles, and chastises his own failings. When you wake up in the morning, he tells himself, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. This isn't cynicism, it is his daily mental preparation, his way of strengthening his resolve to meet the day's challenges with virtue. He was the most powerful man in the world, yet his primary focus was not on ruling others, but on ruling himself a little better each morning. This is the epitome of Stoic improvement, a quiet, continuous effort that happens behind the scenes, invisible to the outside world but transformative to the inner one. The power of this approach is its compound effect. Much like a small financial investment grows exponentially over time through compound interest, a small daily investment in your character compounds into a remarkable reservoir of resilience, wisdom, and strength. A single act of restraint in a moment of anger might seem insignificant, but string together 100 such acts over months and years, and you have forged a temperament of profound calm that cannot be easily shaken. Choosing to speak truthfully in one uncomfortable conversation is a small victory. Making it a non-negotiable habit across a lifetime builds a reputation of unassailable integrity. This is how the Stoic builds their fortress of character, not with one giant slab of stone, but with countless small, carefully laid bricks, each one representing a conscious choice for virtue. The result is a person who doesn't need to tell you they are strong or principled. Their consistent behavior in 1,000 unobserved moments proves it beyond any doubt. This commitment also fosters a uniquely healthy relationship with failure. For the person focused on continuous improvement, a mistake or a lapse in judgment is not a catastrophe that defines them. It is simply data. It is feedback on the path to mastery. Epictetus advised his students to not be discouraged when they fail to live up to their ideals, but to act like a runner who trips on a stone. The runner doesn't lie there weeping and cursing the stone. They get up, note the obstacle, and run even more mindfully from that point on. Each failure becomes a lesson that fuels the next step of progress. This creates a mindset of resilience and optimism, where every day presents a new opportunity to practice and improve, free from the crushing weight of the need to be perfect. Your power comes from your dedication to the process itself, a journey that never truly ends but consistently rewards the traveler with greater peace, clarity, and an unshakable inner authority that is the quietest and most commanding force of all. And this lifelong journey of inner refinement culminates in the final and perhaps most expansive of all Stoic traits, a shift in perspective that redefines our entire existence, the cosmic view. This is the profound practice of regularly lifting your gaze from the immediate drama of your personal life to contemplate the vastness of the universe and your tiny, fleeting place within it. The Stoics called this viewing things from above, and it wasn't an exercise in making oneself feel insignificant, but in achieving a liberating and humbling clarity. By understanding the true scale of the cosmos, you drain the petty anxieties, ego-driven conflicts, and selfish desires of their overwhelming power, replacing them with a quiet, grounded sense of purpose that is both humble and immensely powerful. Marcus Aurelius was the great master of this practice. In the midst of commanding armies and managing an empire, he would constantly remind himself of the bigger picture. He would write in his private journal, "Think of the universal substance of which you have a very small portion, and of universal time of which a short and indivisible interval has been assigned to you." He would visualize the entire world beneath him, the countless cities, the armies that looked like ants, the intricate patterns of human life reduced to a mere flicker. He wasn't indulging in escapism. He was engaging in a form of psychological time travel to gain a truer sense of proportion. The insult from a senator, the frustration of a delayed supply line, the anxiety over a political rival, when held against the backdrop of 1 billion stars and thousands of years of history, these concerns lost their capacity to dominate his mind. This perspective didn't make his duties less important. It allowed him to perform them without the distorting interference of a fragile ego. This practice directly attacks the root of so much human suffering, our innate tendency to inflate our own importance. We are the protagonists of our own stories, and it is easy to believe that the universe revolves around our personal triumphs and tragedies. A negative comment can ruin our week. A professional setback can feel like the end of the world. The cosmic perspective is the antidote to this self-centeredness. It whispers a simple, freeing truth: you are a part of the universe, not its center. Your joys and sorrows, while deeply felt by you, are a minuscule part of an incomprehensibly vast and ancient tapestry. This realization is not meant to diminish your life, but to place it in its proper context, freeing you from the tyranny of your own ego. When you truly internalize that you are a brief visitor on a small rock orbiting an average star in one of billions of galaxies, the need to be right in every argument, to impress everyone you meet, or to cling desperately to every possession begins to evaporate. What remains is a quieter, steadier desire to play your small part well, with integrity and kindness for the short time you are here. This humility is the source of its unique power. A person who sees themselves from a cosmic viewpoint carries an unshakable calm. They are not easily offended because they know their personal honor is a tiny concept in the grand scheme. They are not consumed by greed because they understand that all possessions are temporary loans from fortune. They can engage in passionate work and deep relationships without the desperate need for those things to define their entire worth. Their sense of value is no longer tied to external validation, but is rooted in the quiet dignity of participating consciously in the flow of the universe. This makes them incredibly resilient and remarkably difficult to manipulate. You cannot threaten a person who has already contemplated their own mortality and the impermanence of all things. You cannot bribe a person whose happiness is not for sale at the price of fame or fortune. Their power comes from their profound inner freedom, a freedom granted by the liberating lens of the cosmic view. To cultivate this trait is to make a habit of expanding your mind. It can be as simple as spending a few minutes on a clear night looking up at the stars, consciously reflecting on the immense distances and the eons of time they represent. It can be reading history not as dry facts, but as a reminder of the endless parade of generations, each filled with people who believed their time was paramount, their struggles eternal, who have all come and gone. It can be visiting a natural history museum and standing before the skeleton of a dinosaur, a creature that ruled the earth for 100 million years and is now reduced to bone and dust. These are not morbid exercises, they are grounding exercises. They are how we regularly recalibrate our internal scale, shrinking our problems down to their actual size so we can address them with clarity rather than drama. This final Stoic trait is the capstone that holds all the others in place. It is the wisdom that allows for unwavering self-control because desires seem smaller, for profound inner peace because troubles are put in context, and for humble confidence because the ego is quieted. It is the ultimate silent power, the strength that comes not from being a giant in your own story, but from understanding you are a blessed, conscious speck in a magnificent and endless cosmos, and choosing to make that speck shine with virtue while it lasts. And so we arrive here at the end of our exploration, with a complete picture of the 25 traits that forge a character of silent, unshakable power. This is not a random collection of tips, but an interlocking system, a philosophy made practical. Each trait supports and reinforces the others, creating a synergy far greater than the sum of its parts. Unwavering self-control provides the foundation, allowing you to master your reactions. That mastery fosters a profound inner peace, which in turn gives you the clarity for measured speech and the resilience to endure hardship without complaint. This entire structure is built upon the bedrock of objective judgment, seeing the world as it is, not as you fear or wish it to be. But the Stoic journey doesn't end with understanding the world, it continues with mastering your interaction with it. Voluntary discomfort inoculates you against life's shocks, while mindful presence anchors you in your only source of true power, the current moment. These practices cultivate a humble confidence, a quiet assurance that needs no external validation. This confidence fuels purposeful action, ensuring your energy is directed by intention, not scattered by impulse. And this focused effort leads to a deep contentment with less, a realization that your worth is internal and cannot be diminished by external circumstances. This inner fortitude is then tested and proven in the arena of daily life. Grace under pressure demonstrates your composure when it matters most. Truthful communication builds an unassailable reputation for integrity. Patient timing ensures your actions are not just forceful but effective. Detachment from outcomes liberates you from the anxiety of performance, allowing you to focus solely on the excellence of your effort. All of this coalesces into a consistent character where your private principles and public actions are in perfect alignment, making you predictable in your ethics and therefore deeply trustworthy. Your power is then refined through observation, gratitude, and the strength to set boundaries, protecting your energy for what truly matters. You become adaptively flexible, able to bend with the winds of change without breaking, finding the way forward within the obstacle itself. This is all fueled by focused attention, the ability to channel your entire cognitive capacity into the task at hand, and grounded by the ultimate responsibility of personal accountability, where you own your judgments and your responses alone. And at the most critical juncture, you exercise courageous restraint, knowing that true strength often lies not in the strike, but in the disciplined decision to hold back. This is not a static state of being, but a path of continuous improvement, a daily commitment to polishing your character. And finally, all of this is held within the liberating container of the cosmic view, a perspective that shrinks your ego and your troubles down to their proper size, allowing you to engage with the world passionately but without attachment. This is the complete Stoic, not a stone-faced, emotionless figure, but a deeply human, resilient, and quietly formidable individual. Their power doesn't shout, it resonates. It doesn't demand respect, it commands it effortlessly through the sheer weight of their composed presence. This transformative power is not reserved for ancient philosophers or modern-day icons. It is available to you starting right now in the choices you make today. You don't need to adopt all 25 traits at once. That would be overwhelming. The Stoic way is one of incremental, consistent progress. Choose one trait that resonates with you most deeply, or perhaps one that presents your greatest challenge. This week, practice mindful presence by dedicating your full attention to one daily task without distraction. Next week, work on truthful communication, committing to absolute honesty in your words, even in small matters. The week after, experiment with voluntary discomfort by taking the harder path in a few small ways. Each small victory builds the mental muscle for the next. This is a journey, not a race. There will be days you stumble, moments you react instead of respond. That is not failure, it is data. It is feedback for your next attempt. The goal is not perfection, but direction. Are you moving, however slowly, toward greater self-mastery and virtue? The compound effect of these daily efforts over weeks, months, and years will forge a character of incredible resilience and quiet power. You will find yourself less rattled by chaos, less needy for approval, and more capable of handling whatever life presents with a steady hand and a calm mind. Now, we would love to hear about your journey. Which of these 25 traits do you find most challenging to embody? Is it the detachment from outcomes, the practice of negative visualization, or perhaps the courageous restraint of not taking the bait in an argument? Conversely, which trait have you found to be the most immediately valuable or transformative in your own life? Share your experiences and insights in the comments below. Your story could be the inspiration or the helpful tip that guides another viewer on their own path to cultivating a silence that speaks volumes and a power that requires no explanation.